It drives even with the steering light on, so.
I've just spotted something, literally just now. Got quite a big leak under there. Right folks, so welcome back to another video. This is a new project car, 335i with the N54 engine. It's got a manual box, which is pretty important. Drive being sent to the back. Currently covered in a lot of tree sap, even though I did have the cover on for a fair bit, but yeah, this tree is a bit of a mess anyway. I got this car totally sight unseen from an auction site online. It arrived on a truck, as you saw at the start of the video in those clips. Essentially what happened was I was sitting there one evening, mate of mine forwarded me some pics because it was coming up in BCA. You car traders will know, you've got access to that. And he said this is going in auction tomorrow, it may go cheap. And I've always kind of had this N54 plan in my head. Just there's a lot of stories of obviously everything attached to the engine being a bit of a nightmare, but I do like a bit of a nightmare on this channel, to be fair. As you know, we have got the M140i as well, so we're on a bit of a BMW tuning hype, and this engine is kind of like a predecessor to that. There was the N55 in the middle, which I did have in an M2, but yeah, it's not really the one I'd be interested in. Paid just over £4,000 for it, which is quite cheap for a car like this. I think it's got just under 120,000 miles. Now, I will of course give you guys a full walk around of the 335i later in the video. We'll get up on the quick jacks, plug into the diagnostics machine, see how many codes we can find. I'm sure it's got plenty. Before we do that though, I just wanted to run you guys through one of the tools I use before buying these more battered examples of cars, you could say. The best tool I could recommend is something like a Car Vertical report. Incidentally, they are sponsors for today's video. Now, if you're not familiar with Car Vertical, it's a website that allows you to get a full report on any car. All you're going to do is enter the registration of the vehicle you like to search, and they're presented with a variety of parameters about it, whether it's been stolen, whether it's got any mileage issues such as being clocked back, or if it's got any accident damage that the seller hasn't told you about. Works in over 20 different countries. A very handy tool when buying a second-hand car, because all you've really got is a description, and in some cases you can view the vehicle. But in the case of the 335i, all I had was auction photos and a description, which was just a few sentences. So of course I did do a report on the 335i and it came up all clear. It's likely on the screen right now. Plenty of green ticks, so again it was a green light for me to go ahead with the bidding. Just so you got an example of what a bad report looks like, here's one on an M135i looking pretty mangled at a salvage auction. Who knows, you might have gone to view this car and the seller might have said it's never been an accident. Now you know, and you know to avoid the thing. But yeah, the guys at Car Vertical have also given me my own special link, which is in the description. It'll save you 10% off your next report. So if you are going to go ahead and do one of these reports, make sure you go through that link. Helps a lot with the channel. It helps support these builds. And yeah, just big shout out to them generally again for sponsoring today's video. Now I know what you're thinking. Enough of all that talking. Can you turn the car on so we can hear what it sounds like? Can't actually do that because it doesn't run anymore. It did on the day it arrived, and I've got some clips now to show you from the day. They're like vlog clips, so enjoy these, and once we're done with that, I'll explain to you what the issue is. Right, so 335's just come off the truck as it is from the auction pics. First time seeing it. Already seen a few bits, but that's part of the fun. Obviously we'll come down in the cheap GTI. My friend's already had a look at it. I don't know how much of this you can hear. We are by a main road. Looks like a completely stock 335. In the back, looks all unused. Got these weird looking headrests. Actually, hold on. It's in here. It's like a... It's got screens as well. This was definitely not in the auction listing. Got the 19s style 230s. Looks like it's got budgets on the back, which is all good fun anyway. We'll probably do some donuts or something to get rid of them. In the boot, got coolant. Maybe a bad sign potentially, but these things do like to have water pump failures. It's quite a decently spec car. I mean, the inside got black leather, outside I believe this is sparkling graphite, it's called. It's basically just grey. But we have got a sunroof, which is quite rare for the E92. Looks like folding mirrors. Well, that's the reg there. So AK56 on, so Acorn pretty much. And looks like two BMW badges stacked on top of each other. I did spot that, to be fair. You spotted that, didn't it?
Yeah, so this is supposed to come to like the surface. It's full. It's a little bit low, but it's still enough.
So the battery is completely flat at the minute. We are going to start it. On the auction photos, it did have the steering lock, the sort of red icon you normally get when there's an issue with it, but it can either be a coding fix or a full-on steering rack situation, but we'll find out, I'm sure. Moment of truth. First start up, seems okay. Sunroof works. That nice inline 6 sound. Good, now I got B58 and an N54. Seems okay, there's no rattles, nothing sounds off. The fact that it turns on is good though.
Yeah, it's got pretty much like minus fuel.
Minus fuel.
The coolant lights on. It's all on this.
Yeah. I suppose if anything is leaking, the undertail will catch it. So we just put some of this cooler that was in the boot in the car, topped it up. So shout out to the previous owner, who actually had this car for 10 years. Right, so because the car's got basically no fuel in it, we're gonna head to this Texaco here that's just on the corner there by those lights. The car's likely stock anyway, looking at the rest of it, so 95 should be fine. We'll put in some 99 afterwards. Right, reverse works.
The brakes will probably be a bit rusted. Just from being parked.
See if they stop. Yeah, we'll be alright. No one behind us and in front of us is clear. It feels heavy. Is this how they normally look?
You feel well made if that's what you.
That's yeah. The 140i feels like a fly compared to this. Drives even with the steering light on, so the TV's probably working in the back as well.
You know, I always wanted a car with TVs in the headrest.
Yeah. This is the last car you expect. Yeah. I'm not even gonna lie, folks. This actually looks mad. It's so tidy for what it is. Well, apart from the scratch, but it just looks smart. That, the grey paint, the 19s. Right, so it's got fuel in it. Sounds good, that does. Test the brakes before we do the grey stuff. It's such a smooth sound. It's uphill now, so we'll have a brake. Yeah, pretty happy with that. Right, so we're back at home. I'll switch to the wide angle so it's a bit easier for me to move around. We're going to attempt to jump start this thing now. Obviously, it's been parked here for ages. I filmed those clips you just saw about 3-4 weeks ago, so it hasn't moved since then. I don't know if some of you guys have noticed, but this engine bay is immaculate. It's so much cleaner than all the other cars I have. So hopefully it's a good indication of it being looked after and its 10-year ownership. I haven't got many documents from that point, but yeah. Maybe the previous owner is watching and knows all about this thing. Now, you might have noticed earlier in the video, this thing had a red steering lock light on in the center of the speedo here. It's a common BMW fault, and in some cases you can't turn the car on at all. Thankfully, on the day it arrived, it allowed us to turn the car on and drive it back home. Otherwise, we would have been stranded. But unfortunately, about a week later, I tried turning the car on and it progressed to the state where you can't even turn the car on. So I think that should still be the case. We'll give it a go now. Yeah, look, doesn't matter what you do. I mean, the iDrive screen's flashing up. I'll get to more detail about what's going on there later, but yeah, it won't turn on no matter what you do. So I had to hit up my mate Ted, who you saw earlier in the video, and ask him if he's got any sort of diagnostics machine. He came through with this, so big shout out to him. I don't know if you can actually see anything here, but I'm going to try a few different things. It's basically a ELV counter that we want to reset. So electronic immobilizer, CAS. I'm actually quite excited now because it looks like it's doing something. Resetting, starter lock procedures carried out successfully. Key in, let's see if it starts. It looks different. I'm sure it might start. Go on. Come on, man. Alright, so let's move this B58 out the way. No cold start delete, as you know. Let's put the N54 in its place. I'm going to put these windows on afterwards because I need to clear this tree sap off because it's actually disgusting. Now, the original plan, like I said, was to get it up on a quick jack, but again, I've had another fail. Reason being, the jacking pad, which you normally can see, say there's one there, is actually missing on the front on the right hand side. On the left hand side it's there, so yeah, if I want to jack up one side of the car, it's all good. I've just spotted something literally just now. Got quite a big leak under there, so I'll turn the car off. As usual, there's always something. The iDrive doesn't work. That was one of the faults on the auction listing. And we also did some digging about why this car wasn't sort of retailed, because it was like just chucked into auction by like a trade garage, and they couldn't retail it because of the iDrive apparently. So probably explains why there's another screen here. Maybe that is a new iDrive unit or an aftermarket Android one and it doesn't work. Maybe in for a little treat. We'll get to that, I'm sure, in the later videos. Right, so I've read some codes. It's got 18 of them, but there's 11 on just the engine, and the more sinister looking ones are these, which are, unfortunately, says it's super knocking on cylinder 5, 6 and 3, which isn't great. It says the fuel pump hasn't got any codes on it, but don't know what's going on with them 3 cylinders. The car did drive fine from where the truck was located to back home. Typically in N54 fashion, I did have a look online on the forums, and they were saying that this could be anything from, yeah, spark plugs, could be the quality of the fuel that's in there. Obviously I did mention we put 95 in at the start because I assumed this car looked fairly standard, but who knows, it might be tuned for 99. Right, so at this point I think it's finally time I explain a bit more about the N54 engine, considering you're probably thinking, why have you bought a car that's already had 2 issues so far in the first video and it's got all these codes? Well, essentially what this is a 3-litre inline-6 twin turbo. It's BMW's first attempt at doing a mass-produced turbocharged engine. From what it looks like, this car is fully standard. Makes around 300 horsepower and around 295 pound-feet of torque from factory. But that is actually well within the sort of capabilities of the engine. I mean, people have been getting upwards of 700 horsepower of these things, no problem, on a stock engine. These things can do 400 horsepower plus on the stock turbos with just a tune, downpipe, intercooler, intakes. So yeah, you can get very good power for not much money at all, provided you do all the maintenance. The main general consensus with it is that the engine is solid, but everything else attached to it can go wrong. For example, turbos can go bad. You have wastegate rattle. You can have bad high pressure fuel pumps. You can have a bad water pump. Injectors can go bad. The thing with these cars now, they're at that age where they're quite cheap. As you know, I only paid for around £4,000 for this car, so a lot of them have passed around and changed ownership, and people haven't been able to spend the money on keeping up the maintenance. I don't know how this car was sort of maintained in the last few years, but I'm sure at the start of this guy's previous ownership he looked after it, considering he had it that long. Also, another little funny thing, people referred to the N54 as the German 2JZ. Don't know how much of that still goes on with the existence of the B58. It seems every highly tunable inline-6 turbo BMW is referred to as the German 2JZ. But all right, folks, I think at this point it's time to end the video. Otherwise, we're going to drag on for another 2 hours of there being this issue and that issue. Hope you enjoyed this sort of reveal of the new project car. It's definitely going to be a proper project, this one. Reason being, there's probably quite a bit to do. In terms of like goals for it, I don't want to get too ahead of myself just yet. You can do all sorts of crazy stuff with the N54 platform. And I bet some of you folks are going to be talking about single turbo kits. It is a bit more difficult for a right-hand drive car, so we'll rein in our expectations for now, but you never know, hybrid turbos is always a good shout. So yeah, make sure you are subscribed for a lot more content to come. Of course, I've got the 140i still, and the Mark 7 GTI, and the Volvo's coming back for some content. And yeah, make sure you drop me a follow on Instagram to sort of keep up to date in between the videos. I'll try and keep them fairly regular. But yeah, take care, and I'll see you in the next video.